if we get a free Iran, we could all see a different definition of freedom. Iran is a multi-ethnic, multiracial, um, multi-religion nation. It's the oldest nation on earth. And I really hope it survives so we can lean into that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to In the Meanwhile. I'm Marcus Harrison Green.
And I'm Nora Kenworthy.
So, how are we doing? And I ask that not as small talk, but as a genuine inquiry into the psychological state of people who are, at this point, processing approximately 17 simultaneous crises while also trying to remember which brands we're currently boycotting, Nora.
Yeah. I mean, between the mergers and the acquisitions this week, it's honestly hard to keep track, Marcus.
Yeah, the good news, and there's, I guess, some, is that everyone's so broke, it doesn't matter anymore. It does feel like we're all just dancing on the edge of madness and our poverty at this point, which is honestly on brand for this particular moment in our country's history.
Yes, there is a specific flavor of chaos right now that feels different from the usual chaos of the last year. Like the dial has been turned past the point where individual outrages are even distinguishable at this point. It's just like one long, continuous ambient catastrophe.
Yeah, no, it's like a catastrophe smoothie.
Mm.
It's just everything in a blender. You didn't order it, but it's on your tab nonetheless.
Green. It's not looking very appetizing.
Sounds like an RFK Jr. special right there.
Yeah, speaking of things that we didn't order and are now on our tab, as we mentioned last week, we are now at war. And I want to be a little bit precise about what this might feel like for the average American right now, because the best metaphor I've been able to come up with this week is this. You come home one day and the town has dumped barrels of toxic waste into your backyard, and the barrels are leaking, and you don't even know why they're there. And the mayor is offering you a dustpan and telling you that the problem will be gone in no time.
Yeah, and we are out here with a shovel and a declining credit rating. And Cuba is apparently next on the list of places we'd like to bury something. And like, just to be clear, the toxic waste here is the fallout of war, the cost, the lives lost, the environmental and human damage that no one signed up for, least of all the people of Iran.
And okay, not to extend this metaphor well past its sell-by date, Marcus, but in Trump's America, there's also no EPA anymore. So I guess it's just up to us.
Yes.
We're calling our neighbors for help now, and they're like, and I want to be precise here, absolutely not, America. That is your toxic waste. Do not call us again.
Yeah, and these are even from countries that have authoritarian and right-wing leaders of their own, right? I mean, so defending this idea to our allies, it sure has been fun, let me tell you. We called them up. We asked for help securing the Strait of Hormuz, which handles about a fifth of the world's oil supply. So not a small ask at all. And the response has been the diplomatic equivalent of, new phone, who this? Not let us think about it. It's just no.
Yeah. It turns out years of America first is a real friendship killer. Like freedom fries didn't really win us anyone to sit with in the cafeteria.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. And while all of this is happening, the war is being memed. Before the smoke clears, there are videos and posts that equate actual war with video games and memes. It's propaganda dressed up as 4chan jokes. My God.
Yeah, and it's functioning simultaneously as propaganda and probably a recruiting tool, honestly. I mean, I guess war is super funny for the people who are cosplaying it from DC, but not so much when you're actually caught up in it, as so many Iranians and our own troops are.
Yeah, here is what all of this costs. Not in dollars, though we can get there, but in people. The UN estimates that over 3 million people are now displaced in Iran. And the number doesn't represent the many impacted throughout the region.
There's also the disruption to oil, as we've mentioned, and consequently fertilizer supplies. And all of this will have cascading effects that economists are already modeling. And let's be honest, the models are not good. We are looking at price increases that will hit the world's lowest income countries first and hardest. Food insecurity, agricultural collapse, import crises in places with absolutely no margin for any of that.
Yeah, and when we say it will impact the world's poorest, I guess we mean most of the world. and also the United States, where we have every resource necessary to cushion the blow and have simply chosen not to have a social safety net. Gas prices gas prices went up 27% in a single month, and that is not a rounding error, folks. This is a policy disaster by any measure.
Right. And that's just what's beyond our borders. On the home front, a federal court, in a case brought by the American Academy of Pediatrics on behalf of basically everyone who likes surviving to adulthood, successfully blocked RFK's disastrously, quote unquote, revised vaccine schedule.
Nora, I guess after Silicon Valley disrupted everything else, all RFK had left was innovating the measles space,
I mean,
apparently.
we love that for him. Uh, clearly the judge in this case had a tough decision to make between, all pediatricians and the guy with a brainworm who cold plunges in jeans. I mean, this case really could have gone either way,
Jesus.
Marcus.
Oh my God. The fact that this is reality sometimes, just, my God. Anyway, in other news that shocks absolutely no one, Pam Bondi has been subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee over her handling of the Epstein files. I don't know. I think we could have seen that one coming from the minute she perjured herself repeatedly.
Yes, and on national television. Thank you, Pam. And finally, as we scrape the bottom of the septic tank that is this week's news, the President of the United States, while audibly slurring his words, mispronouncing Governor Gavin Newsom's name, and mistakenly referring to him as the President of the United States, well, he said that Newsom was not qualified for the presidency because he has, wait for it, learning disabilities.
For those who cannot see our video feed right now, Nora is doing the stare. The full disapproving professorial teacher stare, the one that makes grown adults reconsider every choice that led them to this very moment in time.
Marcus, I'm not even allowed to give that stare anymore in today's America.
Touche, my friend, touche. But let's circle back here to the far-right, theocratic, authoritarian regime that has been systematically stripping women of their rights and brutalizing dissidents.
I'm sorry, Marcus. I just want to check, which country are we talking about here?
That's it's good to always fact check in this case, and it is Iran, Nora.
Okay,
It is
right.
Iran.
Yeah, just checking, because could sound like another country. So.
That is very true to sort of underscore our borrow. I think what is it, Jimmy Kimmel's joke from the Oscars? There, it's not at liberty to say. Anyway, here's the thing about this war that keeps me up at night. We are being told this is about liberation, that we are going in to free the women of Iran from a far-right, theocratic, authoritarian regime that has stripped them of their rights, brutalized dissent, and governed through fear. And I want to sit with that framing for a second because it is doing a lot of work there.
Yes, and it's kind of the same framing we used in 2001, in 2003. It's a framing with a track record, and the track record is not good, especially when liberating people involves bombing a girls' school, or when protecting religious freedom means starting a war during Ramadan, or when protecting capitalism means destroying oil roots and reserves. I just don't know how we square that circle.
Yeah, I don't think the people making these decisions are losing sleep trying,
Fair.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Which is exactly why we wanted to make some space today for a voice that doesn't come from a think tank or a cable news panel, but someone who knows exactly what the history of Iran and the US has cost the world, and whose work takes those experiences and funnels them into a fierce fight for democracy.
Yeah, it is an honor to have Nilu Jenks with us here today. Nilu is a proud first-generation Iranian American with many family members who still reside in Iran. She's also the political and partnerships director at Fair Vote Washington and a dedicated advocate for more representative, inclusive, and participatory democracy. She is currently running for Seattle City Council for the second time, representing District 5. Drawing on her experiences as an Iranian American, Nilu is a lifelong fighter for protecting civic freedoms and upholding our nation's democratic ideals for the benefit of all communities. Nilu, thank you so much for joining us today. I know, obviously, it's with a heavy heart and just with recognition of all the heaviness that is going on, both globally and nationally in our country at this time. Um, I did want to start out by asking, you do have family members in Iran. Can you explain what they've been going through over the past few months, starting with the protests against the government and violent crackdowns on the protesters?
In January. Um, yeah, it's been a really hard time for Iranians for a very long time. You know, it's hard to start with January when the story really starts in 1953, really. And you know, you come to this year and people are really tired of the authoritarian regime, and come out on the streets in early January where they're slaughtered in tens of thousands. Um, those nights were really hard, you know. Looking on my phone, waiting for a check mark to show that my dad has even read a message. Um, and, you know, that he's just alive. It was what every single Iranian was going through, waiting for this shadow that is cast over the country by the regime as they're doing who knows what is happening. And as every Iranian knows, terrible things were happening. And that's what we found since. Um, you, afterwards, though, there's just been this massive fear about communication, which already existed before. There was fear before about open conversation, um, and it was only worse. You know, my dad, in fact, didn't communicate with us afterwards. He just really didn't want to through the internet. And the only message I've directly gotten from him since then is Happy Valentine's Day to my sisters and me. It's a holiday. You know, he lived here for many years. And Valentine's Day, for whatever reason, he loves that holiday. So for me, it's never been a romantic holiday so much as a family one, and that's the only message I've received since. And what's really been huge is people who have a landline feel a little more comfortable making phone calls, but they're also exceptionally expensive. Um, and the one thing I remember him saying, you know, last year was people are starting to quote prices in dollars. Just that's how bad the inflation is. Um, because well, you know, from one day to the next, the cost of something could change so much. And so um, yeah, it's been really a struggle to get contact with family. And, you know, thankfully, one cousin to another cousin to another cousin will get information out.
Mm,
And so the last time I heard he's okay was last Monday. So it's been a week.
wow. I can't imagine how difficult it is to know that someone's on the other line and just not able to even say the most basic things. Um, what have you been hearing from family and friends since the US and Israeli invasion began on February 28th, if anything?
Um, well, I heard that he's okay through one family member, and you know, others. My mom's side is all from the north, and that just there's just not bombing there, but there's concerns about running out of food like happened last summer, because last summer a lot of Tehran poured to the north. Again, there was less bombing, and you start running out of food, and now there's concerns about that and also the cost of the food. You know, it's not easy to get, you know, there's an embargo and all these sanctions to even get money to our families, which makes it even more challenging. um, and so that's the big concern now, and also just not knowing, you know, that at the same time, like we're hearing information, but everyone is aware that all of it could be lies. You know, they've they've asked questions like, "Is it true? Is Netanyahu dead?" And that was before, you know, this recent thing. It was just like, but messaging is going out to play with everyone's minds and hearts. Um, in every direction, frankly. And that's what's been hardest is we're sitting here and they'll ask for information to confirm things they've heard or haven't heard. And it's a really strangled way to talk. I'll share that where nobody can speak freely.
Yeah, truly cannot imagine. So I do want to ask, the president, President Donald Trump has offered what he has offered has been certainly conflicting reasons why the U.S. is even engaged in this war. One of the things that he's pointed to, at least ostensibly, has been, supporting the protesters. Can you just talk a little bit about that and why or why not that does or doesn't hold water for you?
Well, it doesn't hold water for me because he didn't care before. There's been 47 years where he could have said something if he cared that much. Um, and the reality is that I don't think that you can bomb your way to peace. And it's very hard for me to believe that that was the intentional goal of this mission. Um, if it were, you wouldn't be bombing civilian neighborhoods. If it were, you would be doing everything you can to get internet to the people. If it were, you um, would perhaps not shut off the satellites, and insist that satellites so we can see what's happening aren't turned off. Um, and, I'm sure there is a part that is about freeing Iranians. Iranian people have suffered in ways that I don't think this country even is close to understanding. I don't, even when I read the news now, so little of it is about what Iranians are going through as a people. It's all about, I don't know, dismissal and drones and that. It's all still centering the regime and their response, and not, I've only read one place that somebody talked. There's over 3 million unhoused Iranians now as a result, and that there's very little about that, right? Um, but it's hard to believe that somebody that is engaging in the squashing of democracy in this country is somebody that cares about bringing it to another country. I work on democracy myself and electoral reform, and I am waiting for, SCOTUS to make decisions on Louisiana v. Calais, which is stressing me out. And I'm supposed to believe that the person who is hoping to squash rights here will bring them elsewhere. That's just not how it works. I wish,
Well, let me follow up on that point a little bit, because as you were talking about the difficulties of even getting accurate information in Iran, I mean, it feels like there are now echoes of that in the US as well. So as someone who's really experienced the very sharp end of this kind of authoritarianism, what echoes of it do you see happening here in the United States right now that give you most pause?
what's interesting is when Khomeini first came, he came with the left and came into power, and then some of the first things he did was kill the people on the left, but also go after the LGBTQ community and just anybody that could build a resistance. And that is really reminiscent here of going for testing the waters of who you can take out. Um, and then restricting the news. Iran has, I think, the fourth most restricted journalism in, acts like they can report true things. Um, and here we're seeing that if you aren't representing the president in this war, it's the use of patriotism that really is shocking to me. How it's become a tool of suppression. um and then just the hard part is, the religious right is really running the show here. The Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood, I know everybody's talking about it, but she's talked about how it's based on Iran. And I feel like I'm watching that happen, or the loss of rights here. My daughter having less, I can't say less than me, because if we're losing our rights together, right? And it's fascinating that people aren't more concerned when there are so many models, when you read the 10 steps to, and we're tripping down them. So I would say just a complete commitment to the leader. That demand is more reminiscent sometimes around what we saw with the Shah. Um, and you couldn't speak freely under him either. Um, but here it's combined with this religious component that is just also scary, which I do think is a factor in this war. There are people that, for whatever reason, believe the Antichrist is going to come from Iran and are trying to trigger that experience. And I'm like, well, there's a very strange goal. I have no interest in bringing the Antichrist anywhere.
Yeah, you're in good company. I'll say that. I, as you kind of already alluded to in this conversation, and certainly something I've observed is that many Iranian Americans are navigating just this incredibly painful and complicated moment in the sense that many obviously do oppose the current Iranian regime and have long supported movements for democracy and human rights. Yet they also very much reject the idea that American or Israeli military intervention will bring any form of liberation. So I want to ask you, within the Iranian diaspora here in the United States, what kind of conversations are unfolding right now about that tension between resisting the regime but also resisting foreign intervention?
I think you've hit on the most painful nerve for every Iranian, apart from our feelings of the suffering of our family and not knowing what's happening, is the infighting between us. I think everybody in the diaspora, I don't know, there are, I'm sure, regime supporters here, but most of them would probably live there, right? Um, I think everybody really hates this regime, and wants it gone, and just have different visions for how it's possible or impossible. There are people that are supporting the Reza Pahlavi to come in as a transition government. There are people that are like, in what world is he's going to come in as the Shah, be, installed as a puppet. Um, but really, the conversation there is about just how oppressive this government is, and that we need people to help free us. Because one of the things that I am frustrated about too is in early January, when this became an international crisis, because who killed those tens of thousand people was foreign militia, and nobody stepped in at that time, right? Nobody said a word at that time that Iranians are being killed by, I don't know, Hezbollah or whatever. There's a lot of groups. And in that point, there was a lot of silence, and no matter how much Iranians tried to speak about it. And so it makes it really hard to envision, how do you free yourself if Iran is going to call in Hezbollah and like anybody from Iraq to Afghanistan, but like all these groups, the Iranian people need help. And even me, I will say, after watching that, I was like, wow, the Iranian people need help. I'm not sure they can free themselves of this regime alone. If it's gonna, the crackdown is gonna be in 2 nights. I mean, when have you read a grief around this current conflict and this bombing that makes me really angry is that we'll never get to find out how many people were killed. Was it, you hear everything from 35,000 to 40,000 to 50,000, and we never get to give those people justice and know the actual numbers if you're bombing the entire city that they were killed in. And it reminds me of my aunt. My aunt was executed when I was a kid in 1988. There were mass executions, and nobody knows the numbers. They're buried in mass graves, and people deserve accountability. It does matter for people to be brought to a court of law and be held accountable and speak to their crimes. Um, and we've lost a lot of that opportunity in this bombing. And so you have people who have watched this and seen the silence and want the help, and Trump and Israel offer it, and they are not necessarily wrong in needing that help. It's just that, you know uh, I personally don't believe that Trump and Netanyahu, I should say, are the people who are there to liberate anybody. And in fact, what I've seen from Netanyahu in Gaza really terrifies me, is this is not somebody that cares if all of Tehran or Iran is destroyed, as long as he achieves his own political and military goals. And I I just keep reminding myself, and say to my cousins, our family chats are all very painful. People exit and come in or leave, just um, it's, none of us had any power. In the diaspora, we didn't have power. Within Iran, we didn't have power. Nobody did any of this. Like, even the people marching in Bellevue, the, they don't have power. And that's the worst part. And like, I want us to be able to express our grief and our opinions and what we wish for and hope for without telling each other who's you're actually working for the regime. None of us are working for this regime. And there is fear, right? For me here, the Iranian government has expressed threats to us here, our families there, even in the diaspora. You see the Iranian women's soccer team and what they're going through. Um, the I don't know, it's just a very really cruel regime.
Yeah, I mean, it's striking to me to hear about a current bombing campaign essentially destroying evidence of the last round of human rights violations, which was only months old. And yet, this current bombing campaign, the rhetoric around this war from President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and other members of the administration has also been not just like violent and callous, but flagrantly also violating international law. I mean, I can't count the number of times I've heard the word obliterate. And not to mention the strike on the girls' school in southern Iran. What is it like to hear this kind of rhetoric coming from your own government towards your homeland?
You know, a lot of people talk about Islamophobia really becoming a thing after 9/11. Um, but it's as old as this um, regime. I was born in 1979, so every year I feel like marks how long it's been. Um, and I experienced the racism and Islamophobia, anti-Iranian remarks my whole childhood. The 80s, the 90s, the Iran-Iraq war with the U.S. supporting both sides of that war, which is just crazy to me. The flagrant disregard for our lives, I will say Middle Eastern lives, especially. Are we even Asian? I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're solidly in Asia, but we're kind of nobody's land, and it's an intentional framing I think the world has created, and so I'm a little bit used to that. I'm used to, it was McCain singing "Bomb, Bomb, 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 Bomb." That's not a new song. He did that. It would the Not Without My Daughter, one of the worst movies I've ever seen, where my classmates came to me, asked me if my family eats on the floor, do we have beds, does your dad beat your mom? So I'm used to that on a very personal level. What upsets me, um, I pulled my kids aside a week or two ago and said, be ready. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I can promise you, you'll start seeing a direction towards the Iranian people. And now we're hearing about sleeper cells and like drones off of California and all kinds of things preparing for turning this into being about the Iranian people. And I don't know, Trump said something about our genetics yesterday, and I was like, okay. Um, but that's how this has always been justified, that we are just these evil, savage barbarians, always burying that the people most killed at the hands of ISIS or the Islamic regime, right, has always been Middle Easterners. They are also the people fighting the hardest, more than anybody else, and sacrificing the most to fight for freedom. Um, and I do actually agree with many Iranians who are like, if we get a free Iran, we could all see a different definition of freedom. Iran is a multi-ethnic, multiracial, um, multi-religion nation. It's the oldest nation on earth. And I really hope it survives so we can lean into that, And there's been a lot of efforts to bury that history. Like when my cousin's son is biracial and she's like looked up all this stuff. She's like, did you know Iran's 8% Afro-Iranian? I was like, I did not know. And I want the whole world to know. And that we are that another nation that like the US is that diverse. It it's a lot to sit here and take in. My parents didn't intend on living in the United States. They came here for university, like many students we see in the United States today, and to return home. And unfortunately, the revolution happened, and very quickly after that, the Iran-Iraq War started, and they became undocumented under Carter gave Iranians like 30 days to leave if you can't maintain your student visas, but also you've been cut off entirely from your family and funds and everything. And so I remember going with them as they experienced their race, as they cleaned homes. My dad had a degree in electrical engineering from Oklahoma University, and Oklahoma was very racist. I will say it was very, very bad. People refused to touch them, like physically, and because the things they would say. My dad was pulled out with his friend who was actually Indian from a car with a policeman over there watching, is people beating him up. And so this isn't new, and that's really important for people to understand. And the worst part is, for 3 years I feel like with the women life freedom movement, people are like, wait a minute, that regime is actually oppressing someone. And it's like, yes, the Iranian people. And I got to feel more pride here. And I mean, I've always been very proud to be Iranian American. Um, and I feel like they're going backwards again to making us these evil, like Jafar, and where they cut off your nose if they don't like your face or whatever the heck that was. And, all those things are being brought back as expected. I'm like, hello, kiddos. Sorry to tell you. Um, but I knew it would come.
Yeah, and I mean, and you touched on this obviously with your reference to the Disney movie Aladdin, but a lot of Americans' understanding of Iran comes mainly through media or geopolitical framing that they get from whatever their mainstream news outlet of choice is. And so, what are some other misconceptions you think Americans have about Iranian society and the people living there?
I mean, people will say like the woman can't go to school or things like that. I'm like, actually, 60% of the university is women in Iran, extremely educated. The nation has a higher literacy rate than the United States. And you're talking people that are, when I talk to my friends, they live here, they went to university here, but in Iran, they're like, at every corner, you have these cultural sites where if you wanted to learn a new language or a new skill or something, you get to do that. And it's very strange to them that there's not an ongoing education here in the United States for even adults, which would be kind of fun, to bring to Seattle, just like, kind of community centers, build them up even bigger. But I think mostly people have no concept whatsoever of what it means. And when I was a kid, if I sensed you were Persian, now I'm old enough that I don't, sorry, if I sensed you were racist, I would just say I was Persian. It was just such an easy exit. They're like, you're Persian? There's just the exoticism of this word, I'm like, yes, I have a Persian rug in my office. Like, um, and they would think it was like an extinct society. It's so strange to not connect Persia to Iran. I mean, Iran is what Iran has always called itself. Persia is actually a Western, more Greek phrase. And Persians are actually a specific ethnicity. I'm only half Persian. The other half is actually Gilaki. My mom is from the Caspian. And that's that multi-ethnic people, all Iranian. But I think there's just no understanding of how large Iran is, Rumi. I was like, all that poetry is in Farsi, and people have no idea. And actually, this is something that struck me. If I can just take a little side note, um, you know, I was reading some poem and it said he or she for Rumi. I was like, it said he. That always defaults to he. But in Farsi, we don't actually have gendered pronouns. I was like, man, I hate reading translations sometimes. It doesn't exist for us. So, by the way, if anybody ever tells you that you can't do language without gendered pronouns, I'm like, you're totally wrong because my first language doesn't have them. Um, but this idea of Rumi just being Persian and people not realizing they're walking around quoting this man and don't know that it's Iran. They don't know that a Persian poet, again, the Iranian poet, that's on the UN. It's like these people that you fear so much are people that you're quoting. Um, yeah, there's just uh, a lot that people don't know. You know, they're like, why do you guys sing and party? And I was like, I don't know. We just love to party. So, like, and one thing I'll say with the partying, because it is a true grief point, is, you know, right now is Ramadan, and there are many Iranians that celebrate Ramadan, and they're probably more religious. And, you know, many of you, of course, all those supporting the regime will be celebrating Ramadan, but it is a time of celebration. And so this whole segment of Iran is being bombed during their most important holiday to them. And Friday, a holiday that basically all Iranians celebrate, is Persian New Year. It starts, it's a 13-day celebration. And I'm like, you're going to bomb straight through our New Year as well. And it's just so sad that at either the holiest time for some people or the most celebratory, you know, our New Year starts literally at the moment of spring. So 7:46 a.m. on Friday, when the Earth, you know, our equator crosses the sun's equatorial plane, begins our New Year celebration, the birth of life. And just this country bombing with no care or thought to anybody's observances is just, oh, I'm like, is it even intentional to say I don't care? You know, has been a lot to take in.
Understanding that many Americans have a very slim understanding of both what's going on in this conflict as well as, you know, Iranian culture, what are some things that our listeners could do to help people in Iran and also Iranian Americans right now in this moment? It feels like an important moment for us to kind of share in that grief, but also in the commitment to building something better there.
You know, I think Americans need to consider and understand that we get a vote in the world's superpower, the one real superpower. And there is a lot of responsibility with those votes, a lot. You cannot just simply vote for the US and pretend it doesn't matter, because ultimately it impacts you. You know, they say, like, if the, you know, president of the US sneezes, the whole world gets a cold, or whatever that saying is. And I think that's what we're seeing. The president, I don't know, like, you can't even call it a sneeze. Has caused significant damage to the entire global economy. I don't know if you're looking at the fertilizer situation and all that. We're in trouble. Like, globally, we're in trouble, and it's time Americans recognized how important their vote is. This midterm election is coming, and we owe it to other people to do better. You know, when he was running, I was in a group with there's some representatives from South Africa, who had worked on their transition to a new government post apartheid, and they were saying how important it was that we chose democracy. And it's time for the American public to start standing for democracy and really, really meaning it, and accountability, and meaning freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom, you know, that matters. And our votes along those lines matter. I'll say for Iranians, that's just a global understanding of how much power we hold. And the only people that can hold this country and its oligarchy and like its war system accountable is us. Nobody else is powerful enough as us, but only if we work together. I do believe that. Um, for the Iranian people, you know, just check with your friends. We all have opinions. Let them share their opinions. You know, you may not agree with their opinions. I don't agree with all the opinions for sure, but there's nothing else we can do but talk and just be heard. You know. And then what I really want to see at this point, we can't just walk out. You bombed, and not you and not me. We bombed. The U.S. bombed, and there's an accountability that has to exist after that. We can't just leave a vacuum. They killed 50,000 whatever it was Iranians in January, and there's no way in which they won't finish and kill a lot more on the other side of this. I want to see a global coalition come together to bring stability to Iran, help rebuild it. And, you know, I don't know that you can do regime change that way, but at least hold accountability on the regime to not kill the people. I mean, I continue to hope that some miracle will happen and we will get a democratic Iran. It's just looking worse and worse each day. Um, but I do think the world owes Iran a little bit. I think the world owes the Middle East a little bit. The oil that so much of this planet is running on has come at the expense of Middle Eastern people, and that's across the Arab nation, Palestine, but also UAE and all these countries that like we're traveling to for fun that have an entire enslaved population. I shouldn't, I don't, well, it's kind of like modern slavery working, right here, Coffee Klosh. I had somebody tell me that Nepal is grieving because Iran bombed and somebody that was Nepalese died. And it's just, how do you hold even someone's grief? Like, oh, there's so many nations adding up here. And I hope the world can come together and just get off fossil fuels. That's really my answer. I'm over it.
Yeah, no, same, same. I I do want to ask you because you had started off our conversation by saying how much of the coverage hasn't really focused on the plights of the sort of everyday Iranian citizen, and so I do want to ask you, I mean, sanctions had already taken a huge toll on ordinary Iranians over the past decade. So, in your estimation, how does this war already compound the economic and humanitarian pressures that families were already living under?
The truth is, we don't know. There's no knowing. I mean, you can't even see how much has been bombed. I've seen one horrifying map that 30% of Tehran is maybe bombed. I mean, I think the answer is only worse, right? People aren't even in their homes anymore. Iran, I don't know if you know, Tehran is kind of almost at the 0 point with water. The regime was talking about having to relocate Tehran this summer. That's how bad their water situation is. It's also the most polluted city in the world. Like, this regime is just honestly the worst in every single possible way in terms of humanitarian rights and like running that country. Um, and so there's no way in that bombing it and black rain. I don't know if you've heard of this black rain of it's just horrific. Falling in Tehran won't cause decades of damage to people, and just make things worse. Now, what it will look like on the other end, I honestly can't imagine. That's why I'm saying we need a global coalition, because this is the kind of cleanup that is kind of unfathomable, and it's a people that where the sanctions have destroyed the middle class. Um, and Iran has a right to a middle class just like every other nation. I mean, I don't know about rights to classes, is not what I mean, but like, they a vibrant community that is not quoting prices in a foreign country's currency. That would be awesome. Yeah, and accountability for the regime, because you are letting them, I don't know, their kids are running around being professors here, and you saw the guy in London, they just blocked. Oh, why did he own it in the first place? You knew he had it, And so that's the part where the West doesn't make sense. We're just a fabrication of a lot of stories. Um, and you asked how I'm feeling as an Iranian American. I feel like, there's no such thing as half is this and half is that. It's the first time, by the way, that I understand my own kids who are, multiracial or they're biracial. I don't know, because we're white, technically, as Iranians, right? But they're half Iranian, half American, whatever that means. It's complicated to say, right? I don't even know how to say it, but that I understand how they feel torn inside, and that there's not a half you that's this and half you that's that. I feel like all of me hurts. The American side of me hurts watching our democracy go, and seeing how this is being done. And the Iranian parts of me hurt. And there's a land that I've been denied, um, and I'm watching that happen from a land that's denying me, um, and that has always denied me. I've never had the opportunity to really be American in this country, um, because there's always somebody that's here that wants to say terrible things to you. Um, but as I often say, in our conversations as humans, like, I've grown up in this country both as the axis of evil or the great Satan. And maybe not neither of those things are true. And we have to learn to start talking to each other as people, um, across borders and across opinions. And so we can solve real problems for people in this world. Because I don't think our world leaders have shown any capability of having those conversations. All they can manage is a bunch of AI lies and propaganda. And I have no interest of my American side, my Iranian side inside of me fighting. That's not what they're doing. They're wanting freedom for
Yeah.
Americans and Iranians. So,
Yeah. You've spoken a bit about your own daily work, which is a lot of democracy and voting work. I guess I'm wondering, what does a just or humane path forward look like for our two countries? If I can ask you such a hard question.
oh, I have one answer. I am done with minority rule. I am so done with it. You know, President Trump never got the 50% mark. I don't care what he says. And certainly the Iranian regime is nowhere near 50%. I don't even know what, I think they're below 20%. And so I don't care what the system is. I personally work on ranked choice voting. I would love to see proportional representation. Proportional ranked choice voting also exists, but I just want us to not be in a system where a minority of people get to tell the majority what they do. And I'm deeply also opposed to theocracy. I don't care what religion it is. Um, Deeply opposed to anything that says to any group of people that you are able to make judgments on others. Your religion is between you and God. I don't care what your religion is. I'm happy for many people that have it. It brings them peace. But we cannot become a theocracy. The separation of church and state is foundational to us as a country. Um, and that's what I want is a secular, multiracial democracy for both nations. That would be the best
Yeah.
with majority rule.
Yes. Well, from your lips to whomever's ears is up
I
there.
know.
I do want to just wrap up with asking you this question. We had a writer, Ijoma Aluo, on our show last week, and we asked her about kind of what kept her having faith in sort of the betterment of our society, the betterment of our world. And she told us, she still had a belief in humanity. And obviously you are running for office here in Seattle, so I assume you have some level of faith that things can be better than what they are now, even, whether it's, locally or globally. And so I want to ask you that same question. What is it that keeps propelling you and keeps you close to a faith that things can be more than what they are right now?
Yeah. Well, I'm a climate advocate first and foremost. And so you have to hold on to hope, or you may as well just lie down now. Because the problem is and has been big for a long time. And the two things that really right now keep me going are, one, my mom asked me, what do we do? She's also very ill right now. And I was like, Mom, the only thing in our hands is to look at our neighbors and see how we can help. So, she's like, good answer. She's like, I want to look to my neighbor to my left and see if I can help them, and my neighbor to my right and see if I can help them. And this woman just had a massive surgery. So it's amazing that she's just thinking of that. And she's also the one that taught me. My parents were always very generous caretakers and of neighbors and community. So taking care of each other, but when I see people do that, it makes me feel so much better when I see others looking to help. And then the second is just the youth. I just love young people. I was a stay-at-home mom for 14 years. I've been very active in schools. I've worked with teachers the majority of my life. And their their ability to envision a different future is so important. Um, and it's our job to help lay the pathwork to make that future they want possible. Um, and that's what keeps me going, is to give them an opportunity to the future they have a right to, and future generations as well. And so if nothing else, it's my sense of duty to young people that keeps me going. And i I hope someday I will get to see a future that I can be proud of. But if not, I hope my children or grandchildren can.
I can't think of a better place to end it on. Thank you so much for being so honest with us about where things are for you right now and just willing to share your perspective, especially on a topic that can be actually dangerous for you to talk about. We really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope I had some good points in there somewhere.
Yeah,
I usually
absolutely.
come with notes, and I didn't have any this time.
No notes needed. Seriously.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nora, I mean, just listening to Nilu there, you can't help but feel the pain and the heaviness, in her voice, particularly around, being having folks who reside there, obviously, but also just seeing kind of what's going on in the diaspora here, in the United States with Iranian Americans. I think, I can't tell you how many op-eds I've read on sort of opposing sides of this war, and yet I think ultimately, as Nilu stated so eloquently, we need to still focus ultimately on the people who are there, the people who are being bombed, the people who are being displaced, the people who are starving right now.
Yeah.
And I think, this needs to begin and end with them.
Yeah. And I think as painful as it is to hear and to reckon with, she's also reminding us that this is a many decades long history of pain and also just overt racism from Americans, and that this war is being experienced through that historical lens for many Iranian Americans, is a really important reminder for all of us.
Absolutely. Well, Nora, I mean, I think after such a heavy conversation, we certainly need to move into our 8 ounces of joy this week. So, would you mind starting off?
I'm happy to start off, Marcus. So I don't know if you were following some of the electoral races this week, especially the ones happening in Illinois. Um, but I gotta say, I've been a big supporter of Kat Abou-Ghazala since she started running. She's a Palestinian American, young, awesome, fierce fighter, and she just ran the coolest campaign. Now, she didn't win; she came really close. Um, but for me, the joy in all of this is that she completely not just shook up this race, uh, but she challenge us to think about an entirely different way of campaigning. She was out there every single day, showing up for community, running mutual aid projects, uh, literally getting arrested in front of detention facilities, also having fun with people, like throwing punk rock shows and like inviting people to like do that as part of campaigning. I feel like not she really shook the establishment with this campaign, and she showed what it could look like for a young, fired up progressive to run a really cool campaign. And I hope there's more of that. I'm so proud of what she did. I I just draw so much joy from the joy with which she ran this campaign, and just kudos to her.
Yeah, I do hope that there are people who are thinking of running or who do take notes and do take inspiration, and I'm sure there will be. But moving from a woman who almost won to a woman who did win,
Yeah.
my 8 ounces of joy. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a tough week. Obviously, hell, I was just reading.
Scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
Yeah, just this morning I was reading about Cesar Chavez and some of his past, shall we say, that's now been revealed. So I had to go all the way back to last Sunday to the Oscar Awards, and while being I don't know, I guess the in the minority of Black people who actually liked both Sinners and one battle after another, I thought it was a great event, but I think the highlight for me was the fact that for the first time ever in the nearly 100-year history of the Oscars, A woman won for best cinematography.
Yeah.
Autumn Derold Arcapa, and who is of Black and Filipino descent. And I will tell you this, and she won for the movie Sinners. She had previously worked on a high-profile film like Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And I will tell you, when she first won, I was sitting with my partner Danielle, and we were very hyped, and we were like, oh, a woman of color finally won. And then they were like, Danielle was looking up, and she was like,
Woman.
a woman in a century of like American film. My God, it was like in 2026. Is this an actual first? Are you serious? So, as sort of floored as I was that was actually the case, the fact that during her acceptance speech, she asked all of the women to stand up, and just said, I'm here because of you, because of your sacrifices and your work, and essentially standing on their shoulders. And I thought it was just such a great way, even though I'm not gonna lie, I don't want to use the word travesty for something that's trivial as an award show, but certainly in the context of the Oscars, it's a travesty that it took nearly 100 years for a woman to win for best cinematography. That said, I thought it was such a great, elegant way in which to celebrate, and so kudos to Autumn. Also a honorable mention to Michael B. Jordan, who won for best actor over Timothy. I hate the performing arts.
Opera
Shyamalan.
sucks.
Yes, and and the fact that Michael B. Jordan went to In-N-Out Burger after his Oscar win, and there's a wonderful TikTok, I think, where he's like ordering In-N-Out and the Oscar is right next to him as he's getting his burger. That is working class hero right there. So
Also, one more
much love.
shout out if we're talking Oscars. Did you catch Misty Copeland?
Yes, I had to go back. So, she performed during the performance
For Sinners, right?
of Sinner's
Yeah.
main song. I think it's called I Lied to You, which was just an incredible, at least I thought, it's sort of an incredible stage performance
Yeah.
of a scene in the movie, where they go back from like the blues era of music all the way up to hip hop,
Yeah.
and everything is represented on stage. Yeah, I thought that was just tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize this until afterwards, but she was out there like dancing on point. The woman just had a hip replacement.
Oh my God.
She just retired, got herself a hip replacement in
Jeez.
December, and is like out there performing again. Women are awesome. Yeah.
They really are. They really are. We try to celebrate them as often as we can on this show. So, with that said, though, shall we bid adieu for this week?
I think it's probably time to bid adieu to this week. All right. Well, if we've learned anything this week, it's that the people absorbing the most chaos are always the ones with the least say in creating it. But that does not mean we get to give up trying to clean up this mess. So grab your dustpan and your favorite neighbors. It's a real mess out here.
It is, folks. So if you want to support the show beyond shouting heck yes and amen on your drive to work, this is a reminder that unlike certain broadcast shows and cable news talking heads, we are not supported by Wingnut Welfare. We are supported by you all. So please, please, please head to inthemeanwhilepodcast.com to give a donation or sign up for a monthly subscription. We promise our rates won't increase as quickly as gas prices do.
Immense thanks to Nilu Jenks for joining us today and bringing the kind of perspective that you genuinely cannot get from a talking head on CNN, the kind that comes from family group chat, from the people you love being in the middle of something they didn't start. That matters, and we're so grateful she trusted us with this story.
And thank you to our producer, Jessica Partnow, and to Aham Aluo for the music. Their work, as always, is doing more emotional support than it should have to. You can catch the show on KVRU Wednesdays at 5 p.m. or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Basically anywhere you watch this fine democracy dissolve into a puddle of toxic masculinity.
New episodes drop every Friday. Until then, stay mad, stay joyful despite the chaos. Let the group chat know you love them. We'll see you in the meanwhile.